First story. My dad's favorite hobby is trolling small children. He does harmless stuff and it's mostly just weird, but he thinks it's utterly hysterical. When I was 4, he convinced me that instead of being born he hatched from an egg. He even pulled out his Swiss Army knife, which he said he used to break the shell open from the inside. It was proof. My dad really did hatch. I saw the knife myself. I'm 30 and he still does this. Last summer, he was at a burger shack in a park waiting for his order, and at the picnic table next to him was a grandparent with 2 very young girls. The kids are running around and wander up to his table and start talking to him as kids do. They asked him what his name was. "I'm Mr. Beautiful." The girls laugh at the idea of this big, beardy man being named Beautiful. "No, it isn't," they say, knowing he must be trying to fool them. Dad assesses their ages and determines they probably can't read yet, and pulls out his business card. "It's true," he says, "look," and he points to his very normal name while slowly sounding out, "By." The kids' eyes go wide with amazement that this big hairy guy was telling the truth the whole time. He read them the card and everything. Second story. Made my wife cry when I pretended to be a carrot. A few years ago we were at a restaurant and received a chocolate shortcake dessert that had a marzipan carrot in it. The carrot was buried in the cake and you could pull it out like you were pulling it out of the soil, chocolate. My wife was amused by it and we named the carrot Charles and brought it home with us. From time to time we would talk about Charles the carrot, usually when we see some dessert that had a candy carrot on it or if we saw carrot cake. A few nights ago we were lying in bed and I was wearing my bright orange t-shirt. My wife hates my shirt because she thinks it's too bright and an eyesore, and it also has a chart with beetles printed on the back that bugs her out. She expressed her dislike for my orange shirt again, and so I replied by saying that I'm a giant, orange, carrot and I was going to go underground like our friend Charles the carrot. While saying this, I went under the covers with the intention to tickle her. My wife, being extremely sensitive to being tickled, started screaming although I hadn't even touched her. When I came back up, my wife was almost starting to cry. I apologized to her and promised that there will be no more carrot shenanigans, and the rest of the night was uneventful. Edit. I didn't know tickling could be this or any level of controversial, so I feel that I should add that I don't condone doing things to anybody that causes distress, even if it's something that may seem trivial. In the past we've teased each other like that before. I get poked, pinched and prodded playfully by my wife all the time, and sometimes I return the favor in my own way. Despite what you may be imagining, I'd say we are quite mild, no use of force to overpower the other person, no restraining, and in fact, my wife tends to roughhouse me more. Anyway, I'll be laying off with the tickling and communicating more with my wife to avoid such situations. Next story. My old boss's wife taught me how to mop. When I was 16 I got a job at a movie theater. It wasn't my first job. I had a few jobs when I was 14, but it was the first job where I was expected to clean up and close at night. I had never really learned how to clean because my mom was pretty neglectful. But I had just moved in with my dad and was slowly figuring it out. When I got the job at the movie theater, they handed me a mop and bucket and just expected me to know what to do. So I filled the bucket up with plain water, plopped the soaked mop on the floor and just dragged it around. Like I walked in a straight line from one end of the room to the other with it trailing behind me. My boss's wife used to come in at nights because they shared a car, and she would help him close. When she saw what I was doing, she stopped me and asked, "What on earth are you doing?" "I'm mopping." "Well, hun, it looks like you're just getting the floor wet." "Oh, sorry." So this time I tried using it like a broom and swishing it. She looked at me funny and then walked closer and asked quietly, "Has anyone ever showed you how to use a mop?" And she very discreetly showed me how. She didn't make fun of me or shame me for not knowing. After that, every time I closed with her, she would come over and check my work and tell me what a good job I did. I don't think she knew just how impactful that was for me. Next story. My dad and I didn't drive home for 20 minutes. It's 10 p.m. I said bye to my uncle and aunt, left their house and sat in my car. Right after, my dad also leaves their house and starts walking towards his car, which is parked behind mine. I open the door to ask, "Oh, are you leaving too?" He responds, "Yup." I say, "Okay, see you at home." Then I close my car door. My dad proceeds to enter his vehicle. There is a trash bin directly in front of my car, so I devise a plan. I'll wait until my dad pulls away from the curb and leaves, after which I will reverse a little, then drive off home. As I would later find out, there was also a trash bin directly behind my dad's car. So he ended up devising his own little plan, which involved waiting until I left first. And so, for 20 minutes we both sat and waited. I scrolling on Grindr, intermittently checking my rearview mirror for his departure. He scrolling on TikTok, regularly pausing to look up and be met with my absence. But alas, random girl complimented me. Being a guy, 20, I don't really get much compliments, especially from the opposite sex. I'm not really introverted, just awkward. I enjoy socializing, I'm just not very good at it. So anyway, here's the story. It's pretty short. I went to the cinema with a friend to watch The Nun 2. We were talking about him coming over to my place to help me with Legos while we showed the ticket collector our tickets. Once she finished checking them, she looked up and smiled at me. I smiled back. Then we go in, find our seats, and I tell my friend I needed to use the toilet. On my way back from the toilet, the same girl stopped me and said I had a really nice shirt. I said thanks. She asked where I got it and I said I don't remember. We talked for a couple minutes, but then I said the movie was GNA start and I had to go. It was a small compliment, but it made me feel so good about myself and really made my day. Next story. I accidentally led a nurse to violate a bodybuilder and an old man. Normal day at the hospital, I'm going in for my first colonoscopy. The nurse asks if I'd like to go under for it. I suppose the experience is less intrusive if you're unconscious. I wanted to play some ranked games later online and decided whatever drugs they planned on giving me might mess with my gameplay. No thanks. I tell her. I'm good. It's just me in the ward outside of a few longer-term residents, so I get wheeled off, get GoPro'd. It was disconcerting. I had to face the monitor for the procedure. And then I'm back to the ward. Some ripped dude about my age is in the next bed over and surprise, surprise, the nurse comes over and he's here for the same procedure. Gas or no gas? The nurse asks him a question much to this effect. What do people normally do? My swole ward bro asks. I respect his question. It wouldn't do to seem like you need the drug, but if societal wisdom is that you go under, well, you'd just be following the usual convention. Nothing wrong with that. The nurse replies, well, he didn't take it, and points at me. I shrug. Ward bro glances over. I'm about the same age. We're peers. And he looks tougher than me, let's be real. Societal pressure now demands he conform to my stupid decision, since it's what the nurse has essentially recommended by the way she worded her last line. And he can't appear weaker than a peer. So he makes the questionable decision I did and decides to go in raw. Some other nurses start to wheel him away after helping lay down an old man in the bed across from ward bro. The nurse gives old man a spiel about what the procedure entails. And the two options, gas or no gas. What do people usually do? The old man asks, not knowing what he's doing to himself. Well, they both didn't go under. She says, pointing out me and ward bro. The old man is now doomed. He might be older, and if it was just ward bro who had gone no gas, he might have been able to go under with pride. But no. Every man here has gone in raw, and the old man still has some manly pride left, even if it's being used for this questionable pursuit. It's settled. No gas for the old man. He's going in wide-eyed for the GoPro experience. While my two comrades are wheeled off to the room of discomfort, I am eating some eggs and toast in my hospital bed. Nice one. When they come back, you can tell they're doing that walk. I know this because I am too. We're all victims here. I get on my bus home, regret in my heart at the discomfort I've unleashed on two innocent men, only to learn no one is online for League, and I went raw for like no reason at all. Next story. I slept on the couch of horrors as a teenager. When I was about 16, I liked to sleep on a two-seater couch in the den of the house. This was the only room that stayed cool at night, and the other couches were made from a horror faux leather material that you would slide right off of. The den was always a mess as it was the room where the TV lived. There was always popcorn, crumbs, newspapers, and garbage everywhere. I would pick up the trash and dust in the windowsill, but never thought about vacuuming until one afternoon when I noticed some sand in the carpet near the sliding door. I moved the two other couches and chair aside and vacuumed under them without any event. When I got to my couch, I took everything off of it. It had wooden legs, so it was hard to move on a carpeted surface. I flipped it up onto its front so the bottom of the couch was facing the ceiling and wall. The bottom of the couch was covered by a thin dark-colored piece of mesh-like fabric that had a few holes in its surface. It was an old couch, probably from the 80s, and was pretty broken down. As I looked at the couch, I saw about 70 juicy black widows clinging to the mesh surface for dear life. A few of them ran into the holes and into the couch itself, and a few of them fell on the carpet and ran off into the abyss. I grabbed the canister vacuum and started sucking those little devils up left and right until I no longer saw any. I didn't sleep on that couch again. When I checked the underside of the couch a month later, I saw about 40 or so black widows and gave them the same treatment as the first bunch. But the widows kept returning and eventually claimed that couch and more territory as they eventually appeared on all of the furniture in that room. They never ventured from the den, but a curious one would occasionally scout its way into the living room next door, or the bathroom on the other side. The widows never bit anyone and we ended up making a peace treaty until I moved out. I never told anyone in my family about the widows because they would have blown a gasket. To this day I check underneath every couch I've ever owned every few months, just to make sure my little buddies haven't returned. Next story. I unintentionally confused an American. I used to work in bars. Working in a bar in Bristol, I served an American guy who decided to make conversation with me, and he asked me what I like to drink. I told him rum because my lot are all pirates. This is a little joke, just for me to enjoy because I do drink rum almost exclusively among alcohol, and I'm from Cornwall, a historic pirate origin hotspot, while my mum is from South Wales, another pirate hotspot. He was confused and I had to explain. This led to the American man talking about the musical stage show, The Pirates of Penzance. I was highly impressed, thinking this man must know of Penzance, which is very near to my hometown and where my mother works, or at least know that the show is set in Cornwall. I started making some joke about how I used to date a girl from Penzance and the pirates are the least of your worries, or some such other terrible joke you make to endear yourselves to the drunken red-faced masses. The American man suddenly got very serious in the face, and told me that just because he's American doesn't mean he's stupid or gullible, and that he doesn't think it's funny that I try to convince him that Penzance is a real place with such a silly name. So yeah, then I had to explain all of Cornish history to this man, and at the end of it all he bought me a rum to apologize. Next story. Once I got a kidney infection and then years later realized I only have one kidney. Yeah, so one time I was about 19 years old and I got super sick. I deal pretty well with sickness, so I was waiting for it to just go away. Thing is, I knew I had a urinary tract infection that doesn't just go away, but damned if I don't at least try to wait it out, am I right? In any case, that surely didn't work. I ended up with a 103-degree fever but felt better than you'd assume? I guess? My roommate called her mom, who called my mom and asked her why she's a horrible mother and hasn't come to get me from college and take me to a hospital. Thing is, I didn't even tell my mom. Fever wasn't going away, so I was like, yeah sure, let's go to the walk-in clinic. Clinic was gonna take a while to get me in, so I told my roommate, actually yeah, let's go to the ER. Determines I have a kidney infection and kept me overnight. Slept like shit. Nurses woke me up from my restless sleep every 3 hours to check my vitals. Totally a good sign, I was so okay. A couple years later I had a CAT scan for some reason and the doctors were like, you only got one kidney? That's not how they said it of course, but yeah, they informed me I have horseshoe kidney. Basically my kidneys are conjoined and operate as a single kidney. So, basically I don't have a kidney to lose. Luckily my formerly meth-addicted father has offered me one of his kidneys should I ever need one. Thanks Dad. And yeah, that's my dumb story about my horseshoe kidney. Next story. These kids tried to prank me for a TikTok. And I think it backfired? Or at least they didn't get the reaction they wanted. I was at the mall looking at the directory. Was kind of wrapped up in it looking for a specific store. Then I hear a loud ass pop in my ear like someone popped a balloon right by it. My shoulders flinched a little, but I honestly was so wrapped up in looking for the store I didn't even look away. I heard giggling but kind of ignored it as background noise, but after a few seconds I kind of felt a presence behind me, so I just glanced behind me and there was a kid no older than 16 that was very suspiciously close behind me. Not right up on me, but close enough where it was infringing on my personal space and weird behavior for a mall. But he pretended to look at something else and I saw a stick in his hand. And several feet away from him were a group of teenage boys giggling and holding a phone in our direction and being very bad at not being obvious. Anyway, my glance was quick and kind of in a I wonder what that was manner, and I turned back to the directory. Then I found the store I was looking for. It was a Mrs. Fields LMAO, and I just turned around and walked away, not even acknowledging them. I heard them kind of talking to each other, sounding disappointed. In my head I was just like WTF. Such a random and dumb prank, and I can't believe the shit kids will get up to for internet views. Next story. 17 years ago a man gave me an enormous painting of the sea because I couldn't tell him why I liked it. I met him at a bar in a town that I never visited again. I had taken a friend to a concert as a going-away gift before they joined the Marines. We both drank way too much and agreed to join a stranger from the bar at his place after last call. Bunch of us went from the show, maybe 15. The guy that invited us over was either obscenely rich or did a hell of a job playing the part. We were a bunch of mostly broke punks, and this was the kind of place with chandeliers, plural. Anyway, the show, the party, the after party, none of that's important. The painting is what matters here. As the night wore on, I wandered and found myself in an office staring at this big weird painting of the ocean. By big I mean this thing is about 3 feet tall and close to 7 feet wide. I don't know much about paintings, but I know this one is kind of odd and I couldn't stop looking at it. I'm not even sure why I couldn't stop looking at it. Like it's got kind of an odd perspective, and feels vaguely oppressive in a way that's hard to describe. At some point the guy walks past the open door and spots me staring at his big weird painting. We talk a little about it. I try to explain that I like it, at least I think I like it, but I can't exactly put my finger on why. He says that he wants me to take it home and keep it. I was shocked. Was this guy serious? At that time I didn't own art. Any art. I was lucky to have one solid coat of paint on the walls of my single-bedroom apartment in a crappy little town 50 miles from there. We talked some more about the weird painting, and something about my reaction to it seemed to amuse this guy. He insisted that I kept the painting. So like the genius young punk that I was, I strapped it to the roof of my car because it was too damn big to fit inside and took it home. It's still on my bedroom wall to this day. I'm still not entirely sure why I kept it. Or the reason that I still catch myself looking at it sometimes without really knowing why. Edit, I posted this just before I went to bed. I'll get a picture of the big weird ocean painting after breakfast and share it. If it matters, the painting is signed with the word lion, which probably means nothing. Edit 2, the painting. It makes me wonder, is this a place? Why do I feel drawn to it? Why does it make me feel oppressed in a familiar way somehow, like I know that place but need to not go back there? Also, what's going on with the left side? Are those mountains along a shore? Because they make me think tsunami somehow. Artman. Final edit. It brings me a deep happiness that all these years later so many of you have taken an interest in this old painting and the weird circumstances in which it came to me. Thank you for reading. Next story. My daughter said the funniest shit today and I felt bad because I had to tell her it wasn't okay to say that. Today I was in the backyard with my kids. It's all grass, so my baby was just kind of existing and my daughter was just watching him exist. Thought they were sitting in the grass, which is by the sliding door. My husband said, "Hey hun, can you come here?" And I got up and my 5-year-old daughter said he wants a divorce. I held in every urge to not laugh as hard as I count, but I had to tell her that's very mean to say, and my husband went panic mode because he thought that I was going to think he actually was planning on leaving me. I think she heard it on TV or something, but that was funny. Next story. I got catcalled while carrying a cast iron skillet. This story is a bit old, but it's on my brain. When I was 20, I was walking home from a kitchen store around the corner from my apartment carrying a cast iron pan. I wasn't planning on buying a skillet, which is why I walked there, but it was too good of a deal to pass up. For context, at the time I was a student athlete that lifted a lot of weights and ran a lot, so it wasn't really a problem for me, but I am still a small girl and my muscles are pretty decently hidden on my frame. So I'm walking home with a big clunky pan and a bag swung over my shoulder, and a man walking on the other side of the road sees me and starts yelling obscenities at me. I don't know why, but my dumbass saw red and I pull the pan out of the bag and start running after him screaming, "Why would you say that to me? I'm Italian and I'm holding a heavy pan," and I'm sure I was screaming 1,000 other things. He started running and I turned back and ran to the road leading to my apartment. I don't recommend other women do that. That was really fucking stupid of me. Next story. I used a fake accent with a telemarketer. Yesterday on my lunch break I got a phone call from a telemarketer. My phone had alerted me prior to answering that it was a spam phone call, so I decided to answer it and use a fake accent to get some laughs from my coworkers. I decided to use an Australian one because mine is actually somewhat convincing, according to my cousin's wife who is from Australia. I answered and the call ended up being a survey about worker relations with big companies like Amazon, Walmart, and Google. I ended up sitting through the entire survey, which was about 15 minutes. I gave honest answers about how I felt these 3 companies mistreated their employees and they should ultimately do more for them. They asked me if I felt any of these 3 companies had a monopoly on the industry they served, and I emphatically said that they did. What started off as an excuse to be funny turned into me trying to give them some genuine feedback on worker relations. I am a union member, so I take it seriously. I managed to use my Australian accent the entire time as well. Next story. I got banned from working the food counter because I ate too much popcorn. When I was 16, my first job was at a movie theater. They would schedule you to be an usher or work the food counter. An usher would just clean the theaters and hallways after the movies. When they would schedule you for the counter, you were allowed to eat popcorn when it was slow because we had so much of it. I absolutely love buttered popcorn, so whenever I worked the food counter I would eat quite a bit. I would not eat in front of customers, but apparently one of the other employees complained that I was eating too much popcorn. A manager told me I couldn't eat popcorn anymore because I was eating too much. Everyone else kept eating popcorn though, so I kept eating as well. Eventually they just stopped scheduling me to work the food counter and I was an usher for the rest of the time I worked there. Next story. Thank you for accidentally making me laugh this morning. I was in line at Dunkin' Donuts waiting for my coffee. Well, Dunkin' is doing a promotion for a ton of donut holes which they give out in a big bucket. One of the employees went to give a customer her bucket of donut holes. The lid popped off and the whole fucking bucket emptied straight into the customer's car. Both girls, the employee and customer, busted out laughing. I could tell immediately the customer knew it was just an accident and wasn't pissed. I was dying laughing with them. I mean, dude, I watched the bucket just pour right through the car window. It was hilarious. Thanks, Dunkin' employee, for making me laugh with your goof up this morning. Hope you weren't too embarrassed and I'm glad the customer was nice about it. I definitely wouldn't have been laughing if she freaked out on the employee. Next story. My girlfriend and I's conversations make people laugh. My GF is very direct. I'm very clueless. Our conversations are entertainingly pointless. This happened a few years ago. My GF and I were hiking up a mountain in Arizona, being all sweaty and hungry, so we started suggesting food to eat on the way down. My GF suggested an Arizonan hot dog. I was puzzled. What's an Arizonan hot dog? It's a hot dog. From Arizona? Yeah. What makes it Arizonan? It's in Arizona. Okay. It made the group behind us chuckle. It was a good Arizonan hot dog. I fell for one of those pay-through-gift card scams and drove to the bank with her. While the bank teller waited for her manager, my GF asked me how I fell for it. The guy was really convincing. How? He had a confident voice and I liked his name. What was his name? Dwayne? Like The Rock? Yeah. You think The Rock needed some Target gift cards? No, but I thought Dwayne from India did. The bank teller was quivering quietly from trying not to laugh. I didn't get my money back. My GF and I like puzzle rooms. Except she can't figure out the puzzles and I can't find the clues. So we worked together on most of them except this one time. Han, have you found that key yet? No, I've only found this coin. Wait, that's the key. No, this is a coin. The keys are shaped like coins. That's the theme of this bank puzzle room. Oh, so that other coin you saw should be a key too. Other coin? The one in that desk you searched? What? There's no oh, there it is. Okay, we can put it in that hole. What hole? When we were done, the employees in the observation room were laughing at us. We didn't finish that room. Every day is like this. Next story. I broke my Italian waiter's brain. As an East Coast Canadian living in the UK, I've spent a lot of time on cold rocky beaches, and I've thoroughly embraced the British seaside lifestyle. This mostly consists of fighting off seagulls while eating a big box of salty chips, fries, and an ice cream. Currently I'm on holiday on a small Italian island with very few foreign tourists. After a lovely meal, I decide to order my usual beach snack of some pâté frites and a small gelato. The waiter looks at me and says, I do not understand. I point at the menu and clarify. Pâté frites French fries. The waiter looks at me again, pâté frites? Me, yes. Waiter, pâté frites now? Me, starting to panic slightly, yes? Waiter, pâté frites for dessert? Me, I guess. You know when you look at someone and you witness their brain short circuit? I looked at her, she looked at me, and there was a shared look of mutual incomprehension. Waiter, pâté frites and gelato. Me, really starting to sweat, yes. Waiter, not at the same time? Me, no. Waiter, no. Not at the same time. Me, okay. By this time my partner is just howling with laughter. The waiter takes my partner's order and when she brings us our food says, 1 almond biscuits with sweet wine, 1 stracciatella gelato, and 1 French fries. Okay. As long as you are happy. By this point all 3 of us are laughing very hard. I don't know if she just thought it was a strange combination or if she genuinely thought I wanted an ice cream sundae made of fries. Anyways, even if it's weird, I was very happy. Edit. This morning I went down to breakfast and was greeted with a huge smile and a good morning darling. So lovely to see you. So I'm glad to report that I didn't actually offend her, she just thinks I'm a bit weird. Next story. The Trader Joe's cashier hugged me today. A week ago, I found out that my friend had an inoperable brain tumor and would be starting chemotherapy tomorrow. I've been a bit of a wreck but holding it together and not letting my friend see that I'm having a hard time. The reason I'm having a hard time is because growing up my sister had stage 4 cancer when she was 15. So I know exactly what my friend's life is about to look like and how shitty it will be for them, and I care about them a lot. So I plan to make meals for them throughout their treatment. But oftentimes when I write down ideas for meals and stuff I get choked up. So I knew shopping for the ingredients would also be difficult, but I powered through. As I walked through produce in the aisles, I started to tear up and could feel myself lose it more and more with each step. I finally make it up to the cashier and, well, when she asked me the customary "how are you?" that did it. I just burst into tears. I somehow got out what I was buying the food for. She dropped everything and came around to wrap me in the biggest and tightest hug while I just sobbed into her shoulders. She didn't let go for a long time and just listened and was there for me. It eventually ended, we finished the transaction, and she told me to take the flowers I bought for my friend on the house. While the problem may not be fixed, I feel a little better, all because strangers all always kinder than was realized they can be. Next story. /pointless stories icon. Go to pointless stories. /pointless stories. 5 mo ago. Slide Professional 983. As a cat security guard. My mom's visiting me and my cat doesn't know whom to guard. Edit, cat pic. I have a very protective cat. I adopted him in 2021 when he was 3, he wasn't that affectionate at first, and after some turbulence, I once took him out to a park on a harness. Horrible mistake I know since he's been an indoor cat in his kitty time, and he ran off. Took him 5 days for him to be comfortable with that whole park, and that night when I went back, he heard my voice and started meowing looking for me. Brought him in my car and he immediately fell asleep. We built a solid trust foundation. I noticed he likes to sit between me and the openings. Door frame window slits, usually facing outside so his butt is facing me. When I go to bed he'll sleep on the side of my bed facing the door or on the floor facing the door. My mom landed yesterday to visit me. I live abroad, and last night my cat wasn't in the bedroom the first half of the night. Sometime in the middle of the night I heard hello meow like when he was looking for me. When I woke up he was on my bed. My mom was still working from home last night due to the time zone difference. She said my cat was sitting her desk when she was doing it and was sleeping by her head all night when she went to sleep in that room. And now he's sitting in the space between us overlooking at the living room. My dear cat trying to do it all. I love my cat so much. Next story. My little brother wants to tell his whole classroom he's autistic. My brother is 11 YO. He was diagnosed with autism when he was around 4 and started psychotherapy and other things like physiotherapy and stuff I can't even name. He talks and he's able to have conversations, etc. He's just extremely awkward around kids his age and can't make friends at all. He also has to take some meds, he's got diagnosed ADHD too. About 2 years ago my mom told him he was autistic. He was super bummed out at first but slowly he started to accept it. Today he told me he's planning on telling everyone from his classroom about it, so they'll know why he's different and can't do some of the stuff they do. He's gonna do it with the help of a teacher from a discipline called Project Living, used to discuss stuff like social equality, feminism, etc. He said another autistic girl from another class did it and it was great apparently. I'm super proud he's doing this. He seems very confident in his own skin now and I think the kids are not gonna be mean. He goes to a socially plural school and in his class there are 2 kids with Down syndrome and a kid with ADHD, that we know of. Hopefully he's gonna make a few friends after this. I love him so much. Next story. I misunderstood an insult and inferred a woman was an escort. I'm in a neighboring town and while there decided to stop for coffee. While in there ordering my drink I noticed a lady on her phone doing her thing. She had on a Patagonia puffy vest, North Face and zero shoes. I'm very much into hiking and recently single. Also while not socially inept at times some things do pass me. Anyway I approached and thinking she too was a hiker asked if there were any trails around this particular town or if she preferred the local state park. She barely looked up and not even actually at me but to the side of me. Commenting, "You literally couldn't afford me." She was back at her phone before she had finished the comment. Now honestly I did not immediately take this as what it actually was. I misinterpreted the information. I politely apologized saying, "I didn't realize you were a working girl." As I am walking away I am trying to understand a couple of things. For one, why would an escort be in this little town? Second, why dress in outdoors gear? I made about 3 steps before she got up saying, "Did you just call me a whore?" "No, I thought you were an escort," I replied. She got really mad. Started going off on me. I explained that no, initially I thought she was an outdoorsy type person. It was only when she inferred she had a price that I thought otherwise. While I've never had business with escorts I have had conversation with them in the past. After a bit more banter I felt the conversation was pointless. My drink was ready. So the lady who made my drink was red-faced laughing at the ordeal. Anyway it's been 10 years since I've last been single and it just feels like I'm off to a stellar start. Next story. 2 women who don't speak my language helped me carry groceries to my apartment. I was walking back from the Target on my school's campus with about 40 pounds of groceries. Not that bad since I live about a 7-minute walk away, but it was over 90 degrees Fahrenheit that day and I was really struggling with all the bags. These two older ladies walked past me, then a few seconds later they came back and beckoned to my bags, asking in Spanish if they could help. I was so touched and agreed since I really was struggling carrying all the bags in that heat. I am not a Spanish speaker and they spoke little English, but we both tried to speak in each other's language very poorly, as we walked. We got to my place and they set my bags down and told me to have a great day. It just made me realize that there are genuine and kind people in this world who will help you even if they reap no benefit from it. Next story. Want to thank the big fat guy who sat next to me on a flight today. The flight was full and 5 people were on standby and or had been bumped. This really big guy with a big frame and also endomorph body type sat in the middle seat. I had the aisle seat. When we were served drinks he was too big to lower the tray. Flight was only 1 hour and 40 minutes. Almost the entire time the guy sat with his arms over his stomach and shoulders pointed forward to make himself as small as possible. When his arms started to drop and became somewhat extended, he'd immediately lift them back in towards his chest again and above his stomach. I imagine it must have been super uncomfortable. I had a pretty comfortable flight. I'm almost 100% certain he didn't. I wanted to thank him when the flight ended, but I didn't know if he'd take it at face value or not or if it would stir up some things he didn't want to talk about on a shorter flight. In any case, thanks Jared for being so considerate. You're the most gentle giant flying at over 500 miles per hour, or 800 kilometers per hour. Next story. He's my husband, not my brother. TLDR. Neighbors thought my husband and I were siblings, decided to just be cool with the incest. I posted earlier today about the hospital thinking that I'm my mother-in-law's wife, and so I thought I'd share this story. Back in 2020 myself, 27F, my husband B, 30M, and his mom, 53F, moved into this apartment. One of the apartments in our building is occupied by a couple J, 40M, and M, 40F. J and M are great. Over the years we have frequently spent afternoons with them at the pool grilling, drinking, etc. My husband and I have a fairly normal amount of PDA, holding hands, kissing, cuddling on the daybeds by the pool. The confusion started because when we moved in my mother-in-law had met our neighbors first. She told them she lived here with her kids. We both just call her mom. Plus at the time both me and her had bleach blonde hair. 3 years go by. I'm coming upstairs and run into M. I mentioned that my brother's birthday is coming up, and that he's coming to see us. She asks me how many brothers I have and I tell her about my 6 siblings. She gets confused and asks about my brother B. I am also confused and say I don't have a brother B. She says I live with him. So I informed her that B is my husband, not my brother. M was horrified and explained why she thought we were siblings and that she thought we were just very close. Since we were nice and otherwise normal, she just decided not to pry and be cool with it. So for 3 years she just walked around thinking her neighbors were keeping it in the family, but that's between them and whatever god they worship. Next story. We just realized why my mom has a phobia of single beans. My mom has a pretty intense phobia of beans when they're on their own. A single bean. This extends to other squishy roundish objects like peas, and she feels very sick looking at them. I often have to pick them up if they fall using kitchen roll because she's disgusted by the thought of me touching a single pea/bean with my bare hands. We've been wondering what the fuck this was for ages because what kind of phobia is that? I've never heard of anyone with the same specific thing, looked it up and couldn't find anything, and my mom was convinced that everybody else felt the same. I had to convince her that they didn't. We realized why today. We got onto the topic of cats leaving organs from their prey, and my mum said that her cats were quite prolific hunters and would often bring the stomachs of mice in and leave them in the house as gifts. Obviously this was pretty disgusting. It was quite often that it happened, and one time my mum stepped on one. She looked horrified describing this. Stomachs look like little beans. Little single squishy beans. We have figured it out. I'm going to talk about this in my psychology class. Thanks mom. Next story. Decided to lose weight because of Domino's Pizza's garlic knots. This story is embarrassing and don't want to share with anyone in real life. For a week straight I've been into Domino's Pizza's garlic knots. I was supposed to be losing weight with my BF, but every night he went to work I went behind his back and ordered these delicious garlic knots. I guess one night I had one too many and felt this tight and uncomfortable sensation in my chest. I truly thought that was the end of me and I was going to be taken out by these things. I started Googling my symptoms and heart attack kept popping up, so I panicked some more, but then I realized that my arms weren't feeling tingly, so I don't think it was that. Then I thought maybe I'm having a stroke or something, but again I was fully aware and conscious, so that can't be it. I took a painful deep breath and started to become really aware of myself and my surroundings and was thinking, I don't know what's happening but this is it. I didn't want to call the ambulance because that's how embarrassed I was. I looked down and had crumbs on my shirt and felt like a slob. So I decided to shower and wear something nicer in case my BF came home to find me deceased in bed. After some more research I realized I just had a bad case of acid reflux LMAO. Nonetheless, the next day I decided to eat better and try to lose the weight. Next story. My adopted mom calls me by my birth mom's name when she's not fully awake. Sparkling heart, heartwarming, sparkling heart. So, long story short, my mother died when I was 3 years old. Her sister, my aunt, then adopted me and now she's my mom. However, I happen to look exactly like my birth mom, like we could literally have been twins. My mom does this weird thing where she's like, awake and talking and seems to be fully conscious, but she's actually not, and doesn't remember anything she says or experiences like that. I'm not sure if it's sleepwalking or what, but that's not important RN. Anyway, sometimes I'll think she's awake and approach her and she'll call me Bonnie instead of my name. That's a pretty clear tell that she's actually not awake. As per the sub, there's no point to this, I just find it amusing and heartwarming. It's nice to know I'm so much like my birth mom, it helps me feel connected to her. Next story. I think my neighbor thought deaf people just know sign language. When I was a child I had a neighbor named Bonnie. Bonnie had a son Marcus who was a few years younger than me and was also nonverbal. He would say a few words here and there though. But all in all he didn't communicate verbally. My mother and Bonnie would hang out a lot, so I had a lot of play dates with Marcus. Or maybe it was the other way around. Who knows? One day Marcus started to sign basic ASL phrases like, how are you, and thank you. He wouldn't necessarily use them in the right context. He would very randomly sign basic phrases. Bonnie freaked out over this. She told us she was scared that Marcus was deaf and therefore using sign language to communicate. This didn't make any sense to me as a child, and I also knew that he was learning these phrases from the show Signing Time. From PBS because we watched the same TV shows. I randomly thought about this today and it still doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't matter if Marcus was deaf or not. Somebody had to teach him those signs. So now I think Bonnie thought that deaf people just instinctively know and use sign language. How else would she come to that conclusion? Next story. I spent the majority of my life trying to figure out what my favorite fruit was, only to find out it wasn't a fruit. So in high school we had these fruit cups that had varied fruits in them like cherries and pineapples and other easily identifiable stuff, as well as these little cubes of something that were very slightly pink and had this amazing texture. I always describe it as rubbery, which sounds horrendous for a food, but trust me, these little mystery cubes were like nuggets of gold. They had the best texture to bite into, it felt like your teeth sliced through them like scissors, and I savored each and every one and even asked my classmates, the teachers and the lunch ladies what they were, and no one could identify them. Well, I grew up and graduated high school, and with that I had to say goodbye to the mystery flavor cubes. As an adult I googled so many things trying to find this fruit. I think I even posted on Reddit at some point asking what it was or something and no one could help me. Cubed, slightly pink, rubbery texture, sweet flavor. Absolutely no bumps or any texture besides smooth and rubbery. That's all I had to go off of. I bought every can of fruit medley I could find that even had anything slightly resembling it on the picture, or had even a slightly weird ingredient name that I didn't fully recognize. Never found it. I found something similar, which were rambutans, which I still love and ate a bowl full of just yesterday, and my search had gone on for so long at this point that I kinda gave up, so I thought maybe it was actually just rambutans in my fruit cups and it was just processed slightly differently or something. Then my girlfriend showed me this drink, Mogu Mogu, because she knows I love drinks that have a texture to them, and Mogu Mogu has these little bits of chewy stuff you can chew up before swallowing. Holy shit. That's the texture. I looked on the container and it said nata de coco. I looked up what the fuck that was, and it's basically jelly made from coconut water. They weren't pink, they were white, but this was it. They were dyed slightly pink from the cherries existing in the same juice. Ladies and gentlemen, we got EM. I found out at like 22 that my favorite fruit is indeed coconut jelly. Next story. My neon hair helped an old man shoplift. Recently I decided it was time for a change, so I dyed my hair the color of a traffic cone. Angel, I looked so trashy, but I rocked that bitch ass hair for a week because why the fuck not? A few days ago I decided to go grocery shopping, and as I was walking in the entrance only door, there was an old man who looked like he could be my grandpa. I'm close to 40, kinda just milling around with a cart half full of unbagged groceries. I look at the groceries, look at him knowingly, then turn my head as if I saw nothing. He says, "Thank you," and I reply, "No worries," and he walks out. It was busy that day, so I think he was waiting until some degenerate-looking person walked in so he could walk out with less risk. He probably only gets a little more than 800 a month on SSI, maybe 200 for groceries if he's lucky. That's not enough to keep yourself from starving. Edit. Those of you who are downvoting me, I sincerely hope that you will never find yourself in a situation where you're too old to work, and your government is apathetic to your human needs. But if or when you do, I sincerely hope you never have to go to jail or get fined because you have to steal to live. Remember that when you're his age, there won't be any SSI left for you. Next story. I tipped 50% on bar tabs until I was 25. Really no point, but I hung with a lot of older people especially in food industry related fields. I had been told one time that I should buy a cheap drink and tip 50% and the bartender will like that. What I didn't understand was they meant on the first drink. So I usually tipped about 50% based on the check I received, because cash transactions usually rely on how much cash you have. Later my friend who had suggested this, not to the degree I took it to, laughed and said that's amazing, but I had probably decimated my financials attempting to live up to this standard. I'm still pretty poor, but man, considering how often I've had a $100 plus tab makes me reflect at how less poor I could have been. If I was cool with the bartender and low on money, I'd tell them I'd get them next time, which was usually resulted in a 100% plus tip when they served me again. Roast me if you will, like, I have no regrets. Next story. I have never slept alone. My entire life I've never slept alone in a room. As a kid growing up, we lived in small 2-bedroom apartments. I always shared a room with my 2 brothers. It was cramped and I can't think of a single night where I had the room to myself. At least one of my brothers was always there. There were some nights I slept away from home as a kid, like summer camp or sleepovers, but I was sharing a room with my campmates/friends in those cases. When I was 18, I moved out to go to college. My freshman and sophomore years, I shared a dorm room with 2 roommates. It felt very much like sharing a room with my brothers. A few weeks into my first year, I met my girlfriend, who is now my wife. There were some nights in college where my roommates would be out of the room for the night, either they'd gone home or were out partying, but my girlfriend always stayed over those nights. During my junior year, my girlfriend, now wife, and I got a place together and we've lived together ever since. My wife is going out of town tomorrow for a few weeks to take care of her dad. And I realized that this will be the first time in my entire life that I've slept in a room by myself. Kind of weird. Next story. I got mistaken for a needy person. The grocery store deal said buy 2 get 3 free, which already confused me. It seemed like a typo. It wasn't. Of 5 items, 3 are free. It was mix and match with different items. I carefully read what it included, but I made the mistake of thinking it included the thing the sign was near. I learned when I got to the checkout that wasn't included. I'm going to step aside so I can figure out what I want to get and not hold up the line, I said to the clerk. A moment later, the man who had been right behind me approached me respectfully, addressing me quietly as neighbor and letting me know that he could get the items for me. Oh, I said. I have money, I'm just confused about the deal. I showed him the ad that I happened to already be rereading. I thanked him for trying to help, letting him know it was really sweet. I'm okay now, but I've spent Christmases and other times in my life not being able to feed myself and needing help. It really moved me to have him do that, ESP being discreet with genuine energy. It made me really feel grateful toward the kindness of other people. Next story. All I bought my boyfriend for Christmas is a plastic lid. This man is impossible to buy for. Anything he wants or needs he buys for himself, and I've seen lots of gifts from last year still sitting in the box because he doesn't have time to use them. We weren't going to buy each other gifts this year, but he went out and bought me a whole winter supply of horse feed, so I felt like I should get him something. I scoured the internet. I walked around just about every store in town. Couldn't find his favorite candy. Couldn't find any shoes or clothes he would actually wear. He has this coffee cup with his business logo engraved that he uses every day. His mom engraved it for him, so I didn't want to get a whole new cup. But the lid is really stained, so I found a replacement lid to fit it. And that's all I bought. Merry Christmas, boyfriend, have a lid. Next story. My teacher told me phlegm was not a real word. When I was 10, we had English lessons in elementary school. It's not my native language. At the start of every lesson, one kid would tell the teacher a word that we hadn't learnt in school. And this day it was finally my turn. At 10 I was a big reader and my English was pretty good. So I was actually reading an English book at the time, and in the book I came across the word phlegm and it just fascinated me. I didn't have a dictionary or access to the internet, so I could only make out what the word meant from context clues. I was so excited to tell my teacher this word because I just knew it was a good one. So, the day of the lesson I was absolutely vibrating with excitement. In my head my teacher would be amazed by my genius, and the entire class would love the word phlegm. The teacher asks me, "Alright, Anna Munderstrada, what's your word?" And I smile and say phlegm. Blank stare. Anima underscore Farida, how do you spell that? So I spell it out. I memorized the spelling of this incredible word, of course. That's not a word, what would it even mean? Oh, it means like spit. The gross, thick type. Well, it's not a word. The letters make no sense. Alright, does someone else have a real word that they didn't just make up? My heart shattered. My confidence was ruined. I spent the rest of the day in a daze just thinking about phlegm. It was a real word, I knew it. When I came home I cried, reread the book and found the word again. But I was too shy to take the book to school so I could show the teacher that it was, in fact, a real word. To this day, every time I read the word phlegm I think about her. She could have just looked it up online, but she was so sure I was lying. Screw you, Ms. W. Next story. Hairdresser was very surprised by themselves. Went to Supercuts, which if you don't know, usually hires people right out of cosmetology school so they're pretty inexperienced. I went in knowing this, but I needed a cheap cut. I asked for above shoulder length with bangs. He tried to talk me out of it and I said, dude, I know it might not come out perfect, just do your tang, I don't care much. So he does. And when I tell you it was the best haircut ever. He layered my hair so the natural curls and bounce was there, did my bangs beautifully, just straight up killed IT with this haircut. When he was done he said, I am so glad this came out right because girl you wear this style great. It's been years and I will never forget how nervous he was, but he obviously has skill. When it grew out I looked like Lord Farquaad though, but that's just what hair does when you get a short cut and bangs lol. Next story. I ate all of them. I went to dinner at my BFS family's house. I love seeing them and they're always so kind as to cook us amazing food when we visit. This time it was typical American holiday type of food, green beans included. I'm a huge fan of veggies so I loaded my plate with them. The first bite in and I'm like, huh. They really like their green beans al dente, that's unusual. By the second green bean I was thinking, oh gosh they probably messed up a recipe and didn't realize it was underdone. Don't react, just eat them. It was a bit of a sensory nightmare for me and the chewing, I have TMJ, was intense. I dipped them in the mashed potatoes in the gravy. I tried using the other food on my plate as a reward for finishing another green bean. It was rough and I'm looking around the table at everyone chowing down on them like it's NBD. So I keep going, ever polite, reminding myself of my grandmother's teachings. You loaded it up with food, if you didn't want so much, you should have gotten less. The last two green beans were rough but I did it. My internal monologue was all over the place the whole meal. I barely remember what anyone said cause I was on a mission. After we got home I asked my boyfriend if he thought the green beans were undercooked. Y'all, they were raw. Just straight up raw green beans served with dinner on purpose. Not undercooked, just how his family has always eaten them. I've never experienced culture shock so hard. I'm from another area of the country where this is just unheard of. My boyfriend has never even had cooked green beans, just canned or raw. My stomach hasn't been handling this well at all. This is the kind of thing where I really wish my grandma was still alive so I could call her and gossip and be like, Grandma, you would not believe it, and she'd be all in oh way. I'm just hoping maybe she was watching over me as I ate every damn raw green bean on my plate, as flabbergasted as me, and also proud that I powered through it to be polite. I'm still looking forward to their next dinner invitation, it's always delicious. But I'm skipping the green beans next time. Next story. A childhood photo. Nearly 20 years ago with my boyfriend at the time, we were looking at his childhood photos. He found one of him at a playground in front of a structure with ropes and bars, meant for climbing. He looks at it and shows me the background, oh there's that snotty girl who kicked my ass. And there I was. The snotty girl with the Playmobil haircut. The memory came back instantly, he was climbing, I went up the other side and he taunted me saying stupid girls can't go up there. I said he was stupid. He came down to attack. Well, I didn't hold back and he ended up on the ground. My aunt and his dad rushed to us. He said I called him stupid, I said he started it, his dad had actually seen him charging first. Dad was laughing, told my aunt there was no need to apologize, the kid better take it as a lesson learned. I was really proud of myself. Well, 20 years later I realized that perhaps the fact that my aunt was movie star level beautiful had played a part. Next story. When we were little, my sister lied to me to scare me and I got so scared that she believed her lie. My sister, 6 at the time, and I, 8, shared a room. One night we were laying in our beds and I randomly brought up how I wonder what the lights are that you see when you close your eyes, phosphenes. We were raised in a Christian household for context, and this is how the conversation went. Me, I wonder what those colors are that you see in the dark or when you rub your eyes. Sister, those are from the devil. It means he's near you. Me, how do you know? Sister, God just told me. Me, really? That's scary. What does God sound like? Sister, he has kind of a boyish voice. Me, I'm scared now. I think I see demons in the closet. It looks like the devil is talking to them. There were shadows moving around. I can't remember our exact conversation after that, but we both got really scared and started calling for our parents. When they got upstairs, we were crying and told them the devil and his demons were in the room. They turned on the light, revealing nothing in the room, and my sister eventually admitted that she made up what she said, but got scared because of how scared I was. I don't fully agree with my parents' beliefs now, but my sister and I look back at this and find it hilarious. Another time my sister and I ripped the arms and legs off our dolls, and called it a rip party. We had fun but regretted later. Kids are hilarious. Next story. 4-year-old son. Today my 4-year-old son and I had a small argument over a trivial thing I can't even remember now. Probably something like him not washing his hands after using the bathroom. Then he told me very seriously that I would never get to sunbathe with him if I kept telling him what to do. I had to stifle a smile because he was absolutely dead serious. I find it so adorable that he thinks taking away the right to sunbathe with him is such a big deal, but I have to admit, it actually is a big deal. I wouldn't want to lose that right. So he's quite clever to use it as his leverage. For context, we're not in an English-speaking household. Sunbathe is a literal translation of what he said. Thief accidentally stole dead dog. When I was a teenager, I used to work at an ice cream parlor that was part of a shopping center. One day this story happened. I wasn't at work that day. My colleagues told me about it during my next shift. So this elderly lady was a regular guest at our cafe, and she used to drop in and drink a cup of tea with her middle-sized dog lying under the table. One day she finished her cup of tea as usual and gave the lead a little pull to let her dog know it was time to go. The dog wouldn't move. She said, "Let's go," name of the dog, and pulled harder, still nothing, looked at the dog, and it turned out he had just died under the table whilst she was sitting there. I don't know if he had a heart attack or what. Obviously she was super upset. Gathered she could not just carry her dead dog through the shopping center, so she went to the electronics shop and came back with an empty TV cardboard box. She put her dog inside and carried him to her car. Looked for her keys. Because she was upset and flustered, she had left her handbag at the table in the cafe. So she left the box by her car and went back in to get her bag. By the time she returned to her car, the box was gone. Someone had clearly stolen it, thinking it was a brand new TV. I like to picture that thief's face after he opened the box and found a dead dog instead of a snazzy new TV. Karma at its best. Poor lady never got to bury her dog though. Next story. I saw the most beautiful boy last month. In November, I was taking a test about 3 hours from where I live. I was sitting diagonally behind him, but I could make out his profile and it seared into my brain. He had olive skin, the most beautiful jet black hair, light brown eyes, soft jawline, unique, almost hooked. I can't exactly describe it, nose and these prominent purplish tear troughs that made him even more beautiful. He wasn't so much attractive in the conventional sense as he was in an artistic sense. The captivation was not from a place of, "I want to make out with you." Rather, "I want to stare at you until I can close my eyes and perfectly envision your face." He looked so familiar yet so exotic. So much had to happen since the dawn of time for that face to exist, and it was all worth it. May God bless the dinosaur that died to make the fossil fuel that was treated to become petrol in the car that took his mom to the hospital to give birth to him. I've never really been taken aback by someone's appearance before, but it was just inexplicable. I didn't interact with him, nor do I think he noticed me. I've thought about him periodically since. Like he's just out there and has no idea that he was the most gorgeous human being I've ever seen. He was in the elevator with me, amongst 4 or so others, and I briefly thought about saying something stupid like, "What did you get 4 under?" But I just couldn't. I feel like a creep for thinking of him all this time later, but I can't help it. I hope I don't forget his face. Next story. Had to leave class because of man door car hook hand car door. I haven't told anyone this story because of the embarrassment and pointlessness, but here goes. In my first year of college I took trigonometry. As luck would have it, I got to sit next to my best friend. First day of class, as we were getting settled in, she thought it would be a good idea to show me the epic story of man door car hook hand car door. I was a mean deprived 18-year-old, and I had never seen anything so funny in my life. By the end I was snorting and dying of laughter, and also turning red from the glances of everyone around me. To no avail. Man door car hook hand car door had me in a chokehold, and I continued laughing hysterically. The professor came in and I still couldn't keep it together. Finally, red-faced and wheezing with tears running down my face, I fled the classroom. I ended up dropping out of the class 2 weeks later, having never lived down that first impression. I took trigonometry next semester and passed beautifully, but to this day I can't read man door car hook hand car door without losing it. Next story. Men always seem to get a haircut on second date. I don't know, but it's so crazy, it never fails to not happen. Every time I go out with a guy, the second time we meet they get a haircut and look a little different. Sometime they mention it meekly by saying, oh, the barber fucked up, and other time they don't. And sometime they just trim a little, others they get an entirely new hairstyle. Only time this failed was with a guy from overseas, but he still managed to get a cut within that month when he could find a barber in town. Before that, he kept saying my hair is getting messy and long. Maybe I just have a type made of guys who are on top of their grooming game. Edit, mystery solved. Thank you for opening my eyes. I didn't know men frequented barbers that often. Next story. I've been lying to my neighbor. Sparkling heart, heartwarming, sparkling heart. 2 years ago my boyfriend and I had to move for a job opportunity 4,000 kilometers away from our hometown. We don't have any friends or family here, it's only us and our cats, and it gets really lonely at times. One thing I've been doing for about 10 years now is feeding stray animals wherever I go. I always have dry and wet food in my backpack in case I meet a hungry cat or a dog. One day while roaming the area I met this older lady who was feeding the birds. We talked for a while. It turned out she also fed the stray animals every day. She showed me the spots where local stray cats usually gather. We exchanged our phone numbers and said our goodbyes. For the last 6 months or so we've been talking more. I learned that she had a pretty hard life. Lost her husband, daughter and a best friend all within a single year around 6 years ago, and was left alone to care for her grandson and her friend's 4 cats. She doesn't have much money, she's on a pension and works part-time as a janitor in a hair salon. Money is very tight, so she goes to the dumpsters looking for scraps she could feed the birds, and metal she could sell to buy food for the cats. I'm in no way a wealthy person, but I'm doing okay. Like, at least I can afford feeding my own 5 cats along with the countless strays. I really wanted to help this lady, but she's a prideful one, and would not accept money or even food that I'd buy. But I still really wanted to help her, so I started buying some cat food, would bring it to her, she'd refuse to take it, saying you have your babies to feed. And I'd lie, saying I bought a few cans of this new food brand, and my cats absolutely refused to eat it, I just don't want it to go to waste, and she'd reluctantly take it, thanking me profusely. A few days ago as we were chatting she complained about how the prices for fish went up before holidays, and her cats are used to having fish, but she may not be able to afford it if she can't find enough metal cans to sell. So yesterday I went to a store and bought fish. I knew she wouldn't just take it, so I called her and said I found it at the parking lot in front of a supermarket. It's probably slipped from someone's grocery bag. She got so excited. To make it more believable, I put the fish, it was in a vacuum-sealed bag, on the ground to make it a bit dirty on the outside and went to meet the lady. She was very grateful and visibly happy, and she kept saying how this is her cat's favorite fish, and this bag is enough to feed them till she gets paid next time. I went home feeling really good. But I need more ideas on how to make her accept my help more, as I can't keep finding stuff in parking lots, or buying food my cats don't eat forever. Next story. I ate deodorant and threw up in the school bathroom. Last year I was in the school play, and on show day the cast and crew was just kinda hanging out before the show when someone spotted Axe deodorant on the floor and asked everyone whose it was. Nobody claimed it, and someone in the cast joked that he was gonna eat it, and he walked out of the room for a moment with the deodorant and came back, claiming he ate it and that it was good. When nobody was looking, I grabbed the deodorant. It was clear that he didn't actually eat it since there were no bite marks, but I thought it'd be funny to take a bite of it myself and make it look like he really did. So I took a bite of the deodorant, and dear God my mouth was dry. Then after I swallowed it I went to the water fountain to get the taste out of my mouth. I was super nauseous, so I then went to the bathroom, and shortly after I got there I threw up in the sink. In retrospect, that was really stupid of me, and I feel bad for the janitor that had to clean up my vomit. I didn't have time to finish cleaning before I had to get ready for the show, and for whoever owned the deodorant. Sorry, sad face. Next story. I was caught licking my phone. I am waiting to pick up a family member from an appointment, so I'm parked on the side of the road in a random business estate. I decided to eat a muffin which I had brought with me. Unfortunately it was more crumbly than expected. A big crumb with a chocolate chip in it fell and stuck to my phone screen. I'm so hungry and the muffin is really good, so I didn't want to waste any of the yummy crumbs. I had both hands full with the muffin and phone, so I carefully licked the crumb off of the screen. At that exact moment, a formal-looking businesswoman walked past and happened to look in my car window. I hope she is back at her office now, debating with her colleagues about why I was licking my phone screen. P.S. The muffin is fresh raspberry with white chocolate chips. Next story. Tonight while watching a movie with my family I passed out. As the lead says, I passed out while watching a movie with my family. Not a normal falling of sleep. We were watching Smile 2 and there was a younger child that had the smile. I jokingly turned to my son and said, "That's what you look like when you smile at people." Mind you, he really does creepily smile at people like said smile. Well, we all started laughing, but me being sick with a chest cold, I started to cough at the end of my deep laugh. Another fact that should be stated is that I have a pulled muscle in my stomach. While laughing and trying not to cough because of my pulled muscle, that hurts at almost any move, I passed out and fell forward. Wife and 2 sons woke me and helped me up. I scoffed it off. They didn't believe me when I said I was okay. Eventually passed it off as basically a space monkey. Holding breath until you pass out. But now just thought I'd share.